Aloha and welcome to Island Connections. I'm Brahim Aude, your host for the evening. And our topic for today is university and community. And specifically, we want to focus on a rather recent project for the University of Hawaii, a recent initiative for work in the community. And with us, we have two people to discuss this particular project and the relationship between the university and the community. Ula Hessager, she's the Systems of Service Director for the project of Service Learning. And she's also teaches at the Department of Ethnic Studies. And Dean Alegado is also the chair of the Department of Ethnic Studies, and he's very much involved in the service learning and in other things in the community as well. So welcome to both of you, and we'd like to say, for instance, to Dean first, how did the Department of Ethnic Studies become involved in this service learning activity? And also, like, if you would like later on to elaborate or comment also on that, you're welcome to do so. So, Dean?
Yes, well, more recently, I believe about 3 or 4 years ago, through the initiative of a number of our faculty that participated in a grant to work with both community college and other faculty here at Manoa with the support of the Dean of College of Social Sciences. The Dean sought the help of the Department, Ethnic Studies, because of its long history of being involved in the community. So actually, before these recent involvement in what has become known as service learning, the department has been involved in many issues in the community. From Chinatown, you yourself were very active there, Waihole Waikani, Kaho'olawe, and many other communities. So we've had a cumulative experience within our faculty to be able to provide the leadership that is required
for the college primarily, but also
for the university as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other issues on that point would you like to talk about, Ula?
Yeah, ethnic studies is building on a long tradition on service learning. When Kapiolani Community College and UH Manoa were approached for a national service learning project called the 2+4 service learning, they kind of started working together on that. 2+4 service learning on common ground is an institution of 2 years and an institution of 4 years coming together. It's kind of a funny name. But
2+4, yeah, that's good. Yeah.
We were working under that for 3 years until the grant expired. And the follow-up on that grant is a much smaller thing called Building System-Wide Continuums of Service, which we for short call Systems of Service.
Yeah.
And through that grant that we're working under now, we are trying to expand service learning as a part of the learning strategies for UH Manoa. Kapiolani Community College and many of the other campuses under the UH system are doing the same thing and part of the same project. However, we have a lot to do here at UH Manoa.
Yeah. So in your capacity as project director, what is your role in that particular capacity?
Well, I'm working very closely with Dean. I must say that. We are trying to expand the knowledge about service learning as a teaching methodology. And at the same time, we're trying to look at ways to institutionalize service learning. There are a lot of issues around having community involvement as part of your teaching. And we need to look at ways to ease that task for faculty that are doing it. And of course, we think we should do it because it's a very effective way of dealing with teaching.
Right. So, Dean, you know, Uh, Usually, people think when we talk about university and community, talk about town and gown and like business and the university and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, there's still talk about all that kind of stuff. But in fact, service learning has a different kind of philosophy, or a potentially different kind of philosophy. Would you comment on this?
Yes, that's right. There's a tendency for the public to view the university as being in an ivory tower. That's a metaphor that's often been used, or being aloof and above what's going on, and primarily faculty that are so focused on their research that sometimes they're not that connected with what's going on, unless it involves issues that affects them directly. Then they become involved. So service learning is an effort to strengthen the connections and integrate the university, its resources, especially the faculty, including some of the ties it has maybe with the business community, to work in partnership with various community organizations and agencies to help and assist in solving problems, and then using the classrooms and the students as a way to then make the connections.
On that note, we have a tape where two professors of our Department of Ethnic Studies, talk about the project, and one of them talks also about why he became involved in this. So when the tape is ready.
Having students tutor immigrant students, especially in the public schools, through both my ethnic identity and Filipinos in Hawaii course. I think it enhances their understanding of some of the issues that we discuss in class about the problems faced by immigrant students or immigrants in general in Hawaii. So the students benefit from that direct attention and encouragement that they receive from our students. Our students benefit from having that personal experience in the community, learning about schools in Hawaii that have problems of which they were unaware. Coming from a more middle-class background, most of the students going to work in, say, Kalihi area, were not aware of the deteriorating conditions of many of the public schools. So this has been an eye-opener for many of them, and I think it serves very much the kinds of purposes ethnic studies was established for. I tutored African American students more than 30 years ago myself. It was part of an anthropology course that I was taking at that time, and this was again to give us experience in the community and experience taking notes as one would as an anthropologist in a fieldwork situation. And I continued doing that after the course was over. Eventually I was supervising other anthropology students in a number of different schools in the South Central Los Angeles area. So that has always stayed with me, and it was a valuable experience in my undergraduate education. So when the opportunity came up for me to have some of my students engage in a similar kind of activity, then I encouraged them to do so.
Back in 1999, some of us were on the something called the Welfare Reform Task Force, which was in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and we were really concerned with the prospect of thousands of people coming off of the welfare rolls, their time clocks running out and being sanctioned by the authorities, and basically winding up either on the beach because they had no employment, or else moving from welfare poverty to working poverty because of a lack of skills. So what we thought about what the university could do about this, what our commitment was to the community people. The best contribution we could possibly make was to establish a service learning type of format in which student tutors went into the community in various ways and began to help community people gain the skills they need to function in the modern labor force. With a lot of the at-risk teens that our students are working with, they see our students as models of people who are achieving. They have a sense that they too can go to a university, that they too can move out of the sort of limited environment that they're in into something larger. their sense of being talented, contributing individuals is reaffirmed. Their self-confidence is being raised. They learn how to do job resumes. They learn computer skills. The students are getting a great deal out of this. We ask them to keep a reflective journal, so they reflect on their experiences. They talk about meeting people who they really hadn't met before from low-income minority communities. A lot of the stereotypes which they carry into the program just disappear because they're dealing with real live human beings who they gain a great deal of empathy for. So what this program does is to really widen their horizons and give them a really different perspective.
Well, here we go. I mean, a couple of professors from our department talking about the philosophy, actually, of service learning and so on. So, like Ula, in your, you send your students also to service learning, and you take care of a lot of other students from other courses. Could you say more about that and how you can see the benefit for the students from that kind of interaction with the community?
Yeah, we do have from Kapiolani Community College especially, we have some statistics on students involved in service learning, and they do end up with a better grade point average than students not involved in service learning. But there is a lot of issues in working with statistics like that. Perhaps those students would have had a better grade point average anyway, because they are often responsible students. They choose to do service learning because they want to do something in the community. However, we also have a lot of students that choose service learning because it's often offered as an option. I teach anthropology at KCC also. In my anthropology classes, they can either do a book report or do service learning. And many choose actually to do the service learning to avoid writing a book report. And through their service learning, they get really involved in what they're doing and interested in the issues. I make them do a little bit of research around the areas that they're working with on the introductory level. And they end up doing as much work as the book report or more.
Yeah.
And have a much better understanding of the context of the issues that they're dealing with.
Yeah. In fact, I have several students in my class, Hawaii and the Pacific, in two projects. One is that the Adopt a Hopua'a project, which we will be talking about later on. But yeah, I mean, interesting for the students. Dean, we have a number of students. Actually, we've had a number of students over the years who, before the service learning project, have done things in the community. And could you say something about that through, like, maybe field work and ethnic studies and maybe other things that you were involved in the community?
Right, that's right. I think one of the noteworthy things about ethnic studies is that we've produced a number of individuals who've developed as community leaders and even public leaders today, and a lot of it they've attributed the reason why they've become involved in politics, for example, or in the community has a lot to do with the courses that they took in ethnic studies. Some of these I'll just mention some names, including Representative Roy Takumi, who today is the chair of the House Higher Ed Committee. He got involved because of his experience in the Ethnic Studies 330 class, Japanese in Hawaii. Brian Taniguchi, who's also the Ways and Means chair in the Senate, representing Manoa, was very active in the struggle to make ethnic studies be permanent. And he did a lot, his field work as a teaching assistant, undergraduate teaching assistant, in the Makali Mo'iliili community when they were struggling to stop, quote, evictions during that time. These are just two examples. In labor, my own teaching assistant, Ray Camacho, is now the head of the ILW for the Oahu division. Mel Chang, the Director of Education in the ILW, was also involved in ethnic studies, and it was their experiences that inspired them to go into public service. So although these are few and far in between, you know, it validates a lot of the things that you know, we believe about the connection between learning in the classroom and the things that we provide in reading materials, and making these concrete and having the students be able to experience those things.
Yeah. I recall also, like Eric Gill
Yes.
was, you know, he took courses in ethnic
Yes.
studies, and he's now the financial secretary treasurer of Local 5.
That's
and
right.
In fact, he was on one of the shows of Island Connections
Right.
a while back, talking
Right.
about labor issues and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also other people who are in the you know, labor movement and social
Hawaiian
movements,
movement, yes.
who have also supported ethnic studies and gave us that kind of tradition in terms of community, so to have the university become part of the community, those communities that usually are not you know, talked about at the university, except
right.
like through ethnic studies and maybe a few other places as well. So in fact, we'd like to go to another tape of a student who is ethnic studies major, in fact, Jennifer Mayer, and she works with a particular project which we'll be talking about. So when the tape is ready, we'll roll.
Service learning is real beneficial. Not only do I as a student benefit from learning from my customers that come into the technology center here, but they benefit from me because not only do I help them on the computer, but I'm able to help them with homework. I'm able to read with them. We get to know each other. These people are my neighbors as well. I consider them my neighbors. At the technology center, a lot of the kids come in to burn CDs, and I'm able to open their eyes to different uses for our center. So we're focusing now on job search. We're focusing on using the computer for homework, helping them do research on papers they have to write, for instance. We have a lot of educational software that we can let the young people use as well as adults. So we're helping people with resumes, learning how to apply for jobs, making them know that they have skills and abilities that are marketable, and they just need that little push. This is their hale, and they take a lot of pride, the tenants here take a lot of pride in what they have to offer and what we all do together as a community. So we talk a lot about someone's having trouble paying their rent, for example, or one of the 14-year-old children got expelled for a day from school, for example. We talk about why did that happen and what can we do maybe to help that not occur again. So there's a lot of talk story. There's a lot of that goes on, and it's real helpful.
So actually, it's talk story, it's interaction with the community, and not just like you know, doing helping them with job skills, which is very important, in fact. And this is like just one view, and you can see how she's so enthusiastic about the whole thing, and makes one think that, you know, she's making a difference. In fact, you know, and I really when I went there to check out the hale and you know, interview her and so on, it was quite impressive, in fact. So she works in Project Shine. So would you like to tell us a little bit about Shine? Well, what does that mean? Shine what? Or Ula, you know?
Yeah, actually, she's a student in Ethnic Studies 380 Service Learning class. As an experiment, we have a class taught by Dr. Kent that is focused on service learning. That's the main part of the class. You can take from 1 to 6 credits in one semester, depending on how many hours of service learning you do.
Yeah, she told me she is getting 6 credits.
Yeah.
She was putting in a lot of hours, yeah.
The class is structured with monthly meetings, reflective journals, and a final reflection session, book reports. So it's not that they don't do any academic work. They do. It's a very important part. The reason why I know so much about it is that I'm coordinating the contact with the students for Dr. Kent. So I get to read everything they write, and we stay in touch on email and
you're
follow
pretty
up
tough on those things, I know that. Yeah, that's good.
Well, this class is really educational for me as well. It's such a tremendous experience to just sit and listen to the thoughts, the conclusions that the students come up with. We have students working at 3 different sites. At Palolo, at the Halle, at the Kuhio Park Terrace, where we are the local branch of a national program called Bridging the Digital Divide, and at the Employment Training Center, where we have the longest connection, which is actually a part of the University of Hawaii.
Yeah, is that at HCC, Honolulu Community College?
Yeah, but also they just opened a branch at Windward.
Oh, okay.
But we have only students at HCC.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go
well,
ahead.
the main focus of this whole thing is to help people that are now getting off welfare to get back into the work
Good.
schedule.
So let's see another student perspective. This is Bernard Mokuahi. And he has a very interesting perspective, and he's really into it, I mean, in a very sincere way, and trying to do a lot of good. And then we can have more comments of that. So when the tape is ready.
I found that in Palolo, a lot of the high school kids, college is not a reality to them. They don't think they can go to college, or there's no way. They believe that. And so sometimes they just think that after they graduate, they're going to work or go on welfare. They think they're trapped, which isn't true. It's also possible for them to come to UH. And I talk to them about financial aid and Kamehameha Schools, Bishop Estate, and all the scholarships that's available out there, and how there's a Pell Grant, and you get more money based on your economic situation. And just our presence there alone gives some kind of hope for the kids out there. And lets them know that, you know, there are ways to better themselves, and there are people out there willing to help. American society is just structured to benefit the middle class and the upper class, and how hard it is. I mean, I came from a low middle class family, and I sort of understand where they're coming from, but still, I never lived in the housing area and see how hard it is. And it's really opened my eyes. Sometimes we get caught up into what we're doing, and we become narrow-minded. And it's good to, you know, broaden your horizons with doing different things. And just being involved. The last 2 months, 3 months, it's been tremendous.
So here, like his experience and his upbringing, so the service learning has resonated with that experience and upbringing. So any thoughts on this beyond what we have seen, Dean?
Well, I think that's the unique thing about service learning, in that it places the students in situations where, you know, all of the, we used to call it in the old days, affective aspects of, I guess, learning. It's more active and dynamic, so that being in a public housing and being a student, it forces you to begin to come into contact with situations that normally, if you're just in the classroom, it's abstract situations. So there, you're faced with problems, and you have to begin thinking about those, and to reflect and write about those kind of things, and even ask questions, very difficult questions, as to why certain classes of people are in that situation, and possibly what are the kind of things that needs to be done in order to address those issues. So there's a real connection between a lot of the theories and real problems that people are faced with. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to remind our viewers that this is live throughout the state, and we welcome your comments or questions on Oahu 956-5670, and on the neighbor islands 1-800-342-7949. So please if there are certain needs out there that you would like the service learning project to deal with, perhaps the service learning people would be able to help out. So, and whatever comments you might have on the issue. So I want to go to another tape talking about the digital divide and, bridging that divide and so on. And so Judith Kirkpatrick, I interviewed her the other day.
The project is called Making a Civic Connection. It's a project that is the University of Hawaii, Kapiolani Community College, and Leeward Community College grant from WorldCom that allows us to partner with community-based organizations or K-12 schools in order to improve the technological expertise of students and residents in disadvantaged communities. It's a Bridging the Digital Divide project. The KPT learning centers and technology centers are very popular, and they're open after school and in the evenings. But here we're open Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all day, most of the day on Saturday also, manned and womaned by University of Hawaii, Kapiolani, and other volunteers. The grant money is like seed money. But we're looking for other ways to fund this and staff it also.
Yeah, so Judith is talking about because the service learning project is very important, so there'll be more money coming in, and the university should in fact put in resources for that particular thing, since it is the university wants to institutionalize this kind of thing. So money talks here because people are working, so they need those kinds of resources. So any more comments on this, like in terms of grants? And I know you two have been busy since July 1st with that.
Well, I think the struggle to acquire more resources to support service learning is real, because we know that faculty has to have incentives to enable them to organize their courses to go towards the development of service learning classes. And right now, with the exception of a few small grants here and there, or active encouragement of the administration, such as Dean Richard Dubanowski, there are not that many other administrators who are pushing and providing resources. In fact, ULAS, we were able to get a small 0.25 FTE to match, a small grant.
That's
so
a quarter position.
Yes,
basically.
right. So that we have a coordinator, and that's actually very challenging because we have over 200 students combined with System of Service grant or project, and then Project Shine, involving not just Manoa but KCC and Chaminade. So we have to begin developing those kinds of structures.
Very good. We have a caller on the line, Renee from Makiki. Oh, Makiki is a nice neighborhood. Renee, go ahead.
Hi, Raheem and Dean. This is Renee.
Yeah. Oh, hi. That one. Okay.
Yes, that one. Hey, at work, I work for Parks and Recreation. Yeah. I had two students who were service learners from HCC, and I was wondering two things. That program is set up so that the kids get, I guess, some sort of credit from classes for their work, in this case at the park, the team program. And I was just wondering, do you folks, is your service learning set up that way, and is it possible for people to say that they're interested in having someone coming over for a service learning project?
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. In fact, maybe like the service learning people will get in touch with you. No worries.
Okay, thanks. I'll hang up and watch you on TV now.
We'll get in touch with you on that, and maybe we can talk later on about what can be done and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So these needs. There are a number of other agencies and projects that we can hook up with, in terms of service learning.
And we do.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's that kind of stuff because you want to expand, so
Right.
that's good.
Right,
to see,
because
yeah.
beyond the College of Social Sciences, where we're very involved, there's actually a University of Hawaii service learning program where many agencies in the communities contact them, and they can have the traditional internship volunteer service type, whereas what we're really talking about is a little bit different from that.
Yes. Yeah, because, go ahead.
Well, actually, there are several levels that you can get involved in service learning on, and the simplest way to do it for community members that have an acute need, or for faculty that do not want to have too much work, is to use the service learning office and have them establish the contacts. Other ways are to use well-established and well-run programs like SHINE and BIN-E under the Office of Multicultural Services. The Adopt and Ahupua also. Big programs that are often inter-institutional and interdisciplinary. Then if you as a teacher want to take one step further, you arrange the service learning yourself, maybe fashioned after the class you teach. And that's typically something we see on a higher level. Luciano Minerbi has done it for 600 level classes with very good results for many years. So there's all these different levels that you can get involved in service learning. And we do in the College of Social Sciences have a support class for teachers and students that are involved in service learning. It's a credit, non-credit course called SOC 385.
SOC, Social Science 385, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we've seen, from the perspective of professors and some students, but here is a perspective from a community person who's at Palolo, and she's Dalia Asuega. So when the tape is ready, we roll.
They bring in, I think, a good sense of mentoring our younger generation in the community, as far as advancing, maybe to see if they're interested in attending college. So, looking at a long-term education process, and they being good models to our residents here in pursuing higher education. Residents have become more confident in going out and pursuing interviews for whatever type of jobs, and I think that's important to just have a step out there in the working world, whether it's computer type of jobs or, I don't know, pumping gas. It really doesn't matter a whole lot to I guess to the individual, except taking that first step out there to get employment, which is really hard right now in Hawaii. But there's been a lot of kids that's taken up going beyond, as far as Alan and Judy on the weekends, working with them and taking apart computers. It's a great part about working here in the community, because you get all ages coming into the community center. Totally different from schools or different organizations or institutes where they have structured time, structured age groups. Here in Palolo, it's all ages that enjoy the hale, the students that come here, and the students, I'm sure, hearing their stories, are very willing and able to talk to our kids and let them know that high school is not the end.
So actually, we also interviewed Dalia's granddaughter, which, this is a community place, community center, so kids come in and play and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite lively, the area. So any comments, Dean or Ula, on terms of the relationship with the community? I mean, we heard what Dalia was saying.
Right. Well, from my perspective, and I'm sure from Ula's as well, the relationship with the community, that it be equal and reciprocal, a partnership, And we'd like to underscore that so that we're not being seen as in a, I guess, condescending way, that we're, university has all the resources, we're sending students there and we know everything and will help solve the problem. That's not true. Service learning as a project won't work if we don't treat the community or relate to them with respect, and otherwise they won't want us back in working with them. So it's important that students are also imparted with those kinds of values and perspectives, so that they go in there not thinking that they'll be the one teaching the community. We learn from the community as well.
Yeah. Ula, any more thoughts about that?
No.
Okay.
That was good.
No, I just want to say, in fact, like we don't want to be missionaries, because I mean, that's not our role. And as you explained earlier, I just want to underscore is that it's a question of learning from the community and also applying what we learn in class. At least that's the ideal. Learn what we learn in class in terms of theory, etc., and help out and figure out how we can apply it, and also bringing from the community into the classroom so we can better understand the material.
And it's also important for the community not to view us who are coming from the university as providing students that they can then use as office help or free quote labor. So that's the traditional view, that they're getting something so that then it helps them with their do the things that they have to do. But actually, we prefer a relationship where we're partners in helping address issues. Rather than being seen as source of free student labor.
Right. Yeah. We don't want like cheap labor or whatever. That's not our role. But our role, as we mentioned earlier. But another thing I want to underscore that Dalia, when we were talking, and I mean, she's part of tenants on the rise, and that's a social movement, and also this one is island-wide, in fact statewide. So they have a lot of experience in terms of social movements and so on, and fighting in their own interests, etc. And she was telling me that no professor, community person, or no professor student, but it has to be equal, and that's what she likes about this kind of program. So I was just thinking, like, the community can teach us a lot, as you have mentioned. And, I mean, the history of ethnic studies, in fact, is that, which is like learning from the community, right? And, in fact, the community then coming in to support ethnic studies to make the ethnic studies program permanent, and now we are a department. So these are the kinds of relationships that we would like to see thrive and prosper and develop and so on. So anyway, any other kinds of issues you want to raise at this point before we go beyond that, in terms of, for instance, the Office of the Service Learning at the university? Would you like to say more about it and what it does, and if you see that appropriate? Or
it's actually, it has several functions, and one of them is to help teachers, faculty apply for grants, and they administer the grants through Learn and Serve America and Hawaii Campus Compact. Campus Compact is a larger organization where we're part of the Western region of Campus Compact that encompasses several states. So we have a possibility of creating alliances outside the state also.
Good.
But the main thing to me, to return to the other issue, is that the projects we're getting involved in with the community should be community driven. It shouldn't be something that we think out and put out in the community.
Absolutely. And we create certain, like for instance, the Ahupua'a project, which we'll be talking about later, is created with this in mind, and with the help of community people as well. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
Dean.
Brahim, I also would like to add that much of it involves building relationships, trusting relationship between the community and the university, the faculty and the students, so that although students come and go every semester, one of the things that we want to build is the relationship that it'll be ongoing, because we're part, the university is part of a larger society, it's part of the community. And the faculty live in those communities that are confronted with issues and problems.
Yeah, good point. In fact, this is a good segue into the SHINE program, which I interviewed a number of students. So anyway, we'll see what they have to say. When the tape is ready, we roll.
Students come from the universities, and through their courses, they're allowed to become tutors and to incorporate the experience of working with immigrants in the community to what they're learning in the classroom.
We work pretty much one-on-one with students, tutoring them for their citizenship tests or in English as a second language.
This is really a two-way street, and the adult students who are immigrant, they learn a lot from the college student, and the college student learn a lot from them too, because I think they were living in the ivory tower. And in real life, they didn't realize people work 12 hours. And you go to a Chinese restaurant and you eat, wow, it's so cheap, and then you have lots of food, but they work 12 hours a day and minimum wages.
It was a way for me to learn more about the immigrants' lives and their lives in China as well as here. And it just brought, it just really backed up what I was learning in school. It's a totally awesome experience. Their appreciation is just overwhelming that they have for the teachers, and it's really great.
What I want to see, we want to see, we need a dictionary, English dictionary with pictures. Like this they can relate to. When you say, oh, is this a bicycle? Then I say, oh yeah, okay.
I hope to be able to collaborate for Just Shine with the English as a second language department and the foreign language department to hopefully get more tutors, because if we have a vast array of tutors, then it'll help the immigrants. So if we get people through the university and they have that knowledge, then I think it'll flourish.
Yeah, the first person we saw was Candice Sakuda, and she's program coordinator for Project Shine, both in Palolo and in Chinatown. And then the next person was Mariko Oshiro, so she's also working in Palolo. And then there is Danielle, Mrs. Law, she works in Chinatown with the Shine project. And then there is Sheena Tanaka and Christine Tanaka, no relationship, but yes. they happen to, Sheena, she works in Chinatown, and Christine in Palolo. So they're doing a lot of good work, and Mrs. Law has put in a lot of years in helping out immigrants to become citizens and so on. So this is just from the perspective of people who are working in this Project Shine. So did we say what Project Shine was, in fact?
Well, Shine, it's a national initiative, actually. It's called, Shine stands for Students Helping Elderly,
in
the naturalization of the elderly.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And it's a large project that involves several campuses. Yeah. And it's probably one of our most organized one, and that's been going on for quite some time now.
Yeah.
It's a follow-up on, it follows neatly with the Chinese Citizen Project that a former ethnic studies professor actually was, I think he was part of starting it.
Yeah, even before this initiative, the national initiative, yeah.
So he has been working with Mrs. Law and Candice Sakuda
she
for many
approached
years.
them, to do that. We now would like to shift focus to another project within the service learning. And we have a very interesting interview with Marian Kelly. And so when the tape is ready, we roll.
Under service learning, we could get more students out in the community if we really wanted to do that. And so I thought up how to do it. Well, the original Hawaiians divided up the land by ahupua'a. And each family kind of settled in a valley. Most ahupua'a are valleys. So you have water there, and you have the forest, and you have the beach, you have the ocean, you have the resources. So I thought it would be good to develop a service learning project that was focusing on the Hawaiian ahupua'a, which provides students with more of the history of the Hawaiian Islands and lets them know what Hawaiians used to do. Not too many are doing these things in these days, but certainly some are trying to revive some of the environmental activities that they had going many years ago. He'ia is owned by Bishop Estate, but here's a nice fish pond. The fish pond is still there. It wasn't filled in. So many of the fish ponds had been filled in Kaneohe Bay when all the dredging was done. So we started in at He'ia to let people know what a fish pond was, let the students understand what a fish pond was, what a fish pond needs. That led us to He'ia Stream, because a fish pond is where you grow limu for fish, for food, and in order to grow limu, you need a mixture of salt water and fresh water. So this leads you up to the stream. The stream has to be cleaned so the fresh water can come in. So what is the function of a fish pond? How does it work? In that way, the students begin to understand a little bit then what is upstream of He'ia Fish Pond. And here you have the lo'i that are upstream. I felt that it was important for students to understand the indigenous culture that was here before foreigners came. So much of that is covered up today. And many students that come to the university are from the urban areas, from the Honolulu and the outliers of Honolulu, and they don't get out into the country where there is still evidence of some of the indigenous culture.
Well, here's Marian Kelly. She's Professor Emeritus at Ethnic Studies, and she's talking about how she conceived of the project and the reasons why and all that kind of stuff. Ula, I know you work very closely with Marian, and actually she's retired, but she's not really retired because she's so active in the community. So could you say more about those kinds of things? Because you also take care of the Ahupua'a project.
Yeah, it's closely connected with the faculty's own community involvement, no doubt. Marian Kelly were developing this idea in cooperation with Professor Nelda Quinsell from Kapiolani Community College. And when Marian retired, I took over the active part of getting the program running. And that has been very successful. We have this semester a total of some 80 students from UH Manoa and from Kapiolani, from several different disciplines. It's a program where we are not only trying to work on academic skills, but also on some of one of the buzzwords in service learning is civic and environmental responsibility. And our program is, of course, especially geared towards environmental responsibility. But you cannot be responsible to the environment without being it to fellow human beings. So yes. It's related. We work closely with the community and try to fulfill community need. So it's a very fluctuating program. We have many partners, different partners at different times. One of the partners that we have all the time is a similar program, which is run by Richard Ribuka, who happens to be my husband. And he works at Palama Settlement. They have a little program that they call Malama Pono, where members of his teen club is actually doing the same thing at the same time as we're doing with our students. And that has the same function that Bernard Mokwahi was talking about. Opening the way for people that live in housing areas that have not considered college, university as anything that could be part of their life.
Yeah.
They now work on an equal footing with college students, university students, and start talking about that as a natural thing.
Good. So, in fact, we now have the view of the Ahupua'a project from a student. In fact, he's in my class this time. So, when the tape is ready, we roll.
What we did the first time I was involved with service learning is different from what we're doing now. I think the program's grown a lot. So what I was doing basically when I was at junior college was we do a lot of cleanup, and it was just kind of filling out the possibilities of the program. And what we're doing now is really getting involved. So for instance, we'll do work in Alo'i. We'll learn about Hawaiian fish pond and the fishing systems. When I try and relate what I'm reading about issues surrounding globalization, history of colonial histories, and basically just social relations and things like that. When I learn about the Native Hawaiian sovereignty movement and the history involved, I'm able to see the consequences of the events that have taken place in the past. There's a reason why Native Hawaiians are unable to fish in a cultural way that they traditionally have for thousands of years until more recent times. So because it's not an accident that Native Hawaiians and my heritage, we're unable to live that way, I want to find out exactly why. So Dr. Ahupua'a is an opportunity to visit fish ponds, lo'i, maybe other cultural sites such as heiau and things like that. So it's a chance to see firsthand and talk to people and understand through an oral tradition, more or less, an insider's perspective of why we're living in a different way than we should be or we could be.
Well, here again we interviewed Joey's son, and he was cute. He had this Superman outfit, so he's great, and that makes it, live and real. What we're doing, even when interviewing our students, they have to bring their kids with them and so on. So that's very nice. Dean, I mean, here we're talking about the lo'i. And all of a sudden, Joey raises the question of globalization. I mean, so any comments on this?
Well, I think it's very relevant, and in our department, anyways, and a number of our faculty provides a conceptual or a theoretical framework where that would enable the students to make a connection about history, community, the economy, changes that are going on, and problems that are confronting them. So the communities are not disconnected or in isolation from larger forces that are shaping societies. So and students will begin to see that, especially if conflictual situations where a development company is coming in, whether introducing the building of a golf course in that community, it'll have an impact on the environment and the water system and so on. So it's not an abstract issue by any means.
Yeah, good. We have a project, a very important project, actually projects by professor in Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Luciano Minervi. And it's a graduate kind of project, and class that he conducts. So it's interesting to listen how, even if you are on the graduate level, you can deal with service learning, and then we can comment on things like that. So whenever it's ready, we go.
We are assembling a group of students, graduate students. We try to understand what are their skill and knowledge and interest, make a profile of the class as a junior competent planning team. And then we interact with the community and we process the request that can come from neighborhood board, non-governmental organization, government agency, and also landowner. And we try to come up with a project that will deal with pressing planning issues, could have some impact in the community and would help the community. So basically this, I would call it participatory action research, a very nice project done in the spring of 1992, a community-based environmental risk ranking studying the rural and Hawaiian quality of life in Kahaluu, Hawaii. There is this board that describes participatory mapping. This was one of the early GIS map of community assets. The students here work with the taro farmer to be able to interview them in a way that is appreciated by local people. They also participated in community fairs, conducting mini surveys, participatory mapping. So you see here a lot of action, a lot of participation. This project was considered at the cutting edge of incorporating cultural and quality of life factor in environmental risk ranking by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency representative for Region 9 that was following our project. Waipio Valley, here the students act as a fact finder in the community, use a shuttle diplomacy to talk to the community groups, describe with attention, interest, and good tact the history of Waipio Valley against the chronology in the past and in the present, work with the high school kids. So we interact, graduate students of Manoa interact with the students in the district to do problem-oriented analysis and studies, and also do some field work and interaction with the farmer over there. This study received an award by the American Planning Association, the local chapter. This is the report. There is plenty of opportunity and a tremendous need to do service learning, because the community need the service of Manoa. The students want and need to learn how to work in the community, how to interact with people, how to make a public presentation, how to do survey on the field, how to do master planning and documentation.
Well, here's Luciano talking about very important projects, in fact, and that yielded important results as well. And he's still working on things like that. We still have about a minute left, so I just want to say something about that. We had last Saturday a conference about service learning. So would we be seeing more conferences about service learning in the future? I mean, not necessarily tomorrow, but stuff like that. And then any other kind of thing that you want to wrap up the program with? Ulla first, and then Dean.
Yeah, we have plans of following up, because the institute we had was one day, and it raised many more questions than it answered. And we hope to engage the service learning faculty of the university in a discussion of ways of institutionalizing service learning.
Oh, good.
And inspire the community to get more involved also.
Yeah. Dean, other things that you would like to leave us with?
Well, Saturday, the institute that we organized, we hope that it's part of the initial step in this long-term effort to incorporate service learning into in a structured way as part of the university mission and vision and all of that.
Well, thank you for coming and being our guest to enlighten us, and thanks our viewers, and we'll see you next month with another program. Thank you very much. Good night.
Yeah, we have all these plans for